Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, I'll be the first here to tell you that it can be quite a lot. And if you're within the sound of my voice, you're in a safe place because you must be in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb. It's a risk, I know, but I'm going to assume that you do because you're actually listening to my voice right now. But if you could, subscribe to the podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating whatever platform you use for your podcast, be it Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We're pretty much everywhere. And also, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram, as the kids call it, at, you guessed it, we're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large, because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it, so please pay us a visit. Oh boy, on this one we got a real interesting one. We got a good one. It's it's one that hits close to home because it's the kind of thing where we can all relate to it, and it's about life. It's about the enormity of life. Quite literally, that's the name of the movie, and it's hitting virtual cinema and several of the platforms today, actually. And it's also going to be on disc soon as well. But I mean, it's a heartfelt sort of family drama, but also deadpan funny as well, and just sort of manages to make a real statement and comment on sort of the importance of mental health and just sort of the issues that so many of us are going through out there in the world. But it also does it with a bit of a wink and a nod and a wry smile and honesty as well. It's a fantastic little film. It's the story about Casey, and I mean, his life just hits rock bottom. He is emotionally despondent, and he's played by the one and only Breckin Meyer. He decides it's time. He's going to end it all, but there's a timely phone call with some unexpected news about an inheritance that, let's just say it forestalls his suicide, and it sets off a chain of events that just might save his life because he ends up meeting a quirky single mother, played by Kinney, and her precocious yet troubled young daughter, played by Giselle Eisenberg, who just has an unhealthy obsession with sort of violence and mass shootings that obviously are going on far too frequently these days. But when Casey's bipolar mother goes missing, he ends up enlisting their help to track her down, along with his estranged sister Missy, and through a whole bunch of twists and turns. It's one of those. It's a story about hope. It's a story that actually gives you hope. It's not it's not necessarily a happy ending, but it's one that allows for hope, which is one of those things we tend to forget about in the world, and hope is an important thing. But to me, it's a special film, and I mean, I'm glad I had the chance to talk about it and see it. But we had the unique pleasure of sitting down not just with the writer-director, Mr. Eric Swinderman, but the star of the film, Mr. Breckin Meyer himself, to talk about sort of the origin of the story and the themes of the film and so on and so forth, and just the challenges of independent cinema and just sort of the importance of being able to express yourself and, do jobs like this and through art and really be able to say something with it, which I think is an important thing as well. But check your virtual cinema VOD providers anywhere for the Enormity of Life, or check your disc listings because I know it is coming pretty soon. But first, enjoy our talk with Eric and Breckin, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one.
Just congratulations on this film. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's such a deadpan yet sort of very honest portrayal on, sort of depression and where people can be at and various points in their life. And I guess my first question is for you, Eric. Like, walk me through sort of the origin of all this on your end.
So I was like, how the project came to be and all of that, like where we came. I was really into like Garden State, it's like one of my all-time favorite movies.
Right.
And I just love the style and the pacing of that storytelling, right? There's funniness, but nobody's trying to be funny, right? And that's what I love about, that's the kind of comedy I like to do where, it's not a bunch of jokes for someone to say, and it's just, the situations that people are in. And I love the way they use music in that movie. And then I think at that point I was really into like Inside Llewyn Davis and the way Oscar Isaac was playing that character. And so when I started writing it, I actually had this other actor in mind that I had worked with in Cleveland. I know. And he was this great actor that I did this little project called Made in Cleveland with, and I remember writing it. I heard his voice a lot in my head while I was writing, and just one thing led to another. You know how it goes. It didn't work out with him being able to do it, and but also, originally the Emily Kinney role was going to be played by Abby Elliott from Saturday Night Live, and she was with Breckin's agency, and they said, well, we'd really like to surround her with people that she knows or people that she wants to work with, and that, and obviously I'm a huge fan already of Clueless and Breckin and the work that he had done. I was designated survivor, I think, was at the time that all was coming down. I think that's what you were working on, and obviously I'm jumping on that when Breckin's name comes in to the mix. So, but the movie it had an early manifestation of it was a very different movie. The first draft of that script was just about a guy who wanted to kill himself, and he had to get rid of all of his money because the money was holding him back. And it was just him doing all these good deeds to get rid of the money. And the Jess and Jules character were just almost like one scene. But the more we developed and thought about Jules's character and what she was going through, the more we fell in love with them and wanted to grow their characters out. And then, Robin Williams passes away while I'm writing this, and that changed everything, my perspective of mental health. And, we never set out to make a movie about mental health because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to tell anybody that I know what is right and what is wrong. But we did do our due diligence in researching, the behaviors and things like that. A friend of mine that I actually went to college with is a psychologist, and she read through a lot of the stuff and told me where I was missing the mark and all of that. And then it just grew to this more poignant story where it became about the loss of innocence, right? That's really what I think the movie's about.
Yeah.
Breckin's character loses his innocence by having to basically raise his mother, right? And Emily loses her innocence by having a child at 17. And Jules loses her innocence by growing up in the world of school shootings and active shooting drills and stuff. And they're all sort of, in my opinion, sort of wishing that they had that back. They had a do-over, right? And so at the end, I feel like the movie is about Jules and her going through that experience with Casey. And even though it's an interesting ending, I'll give you that. I think it's the most uplifting, sad ending.
Oh, no, I'm with you. Absolutely.
It's like there's this weird thing of like things are going to be okay. Jules is going to be okay, right? And that's kind of where I landed.
What about your impressions, Breckin, when you first read the script? Because I love the character. Typically guys like this would be portrayed as basically a sad sack, and this guy isn't a sad sack at all.
No, it was, when I first read it, reading it as an actor, obviously the thought of, okay, well, how do you make this someone who suffers from anhedonia, meaning no pleasure from movies, TV, life, money, sex, anything? How do you do that and not make it just boring? How do you just not make this a zombie walking through it? And part of the reason is, in talking with Eric, was Casey's pretending a lot. Again, he doesn't want to stand out. Yeah. And the idea, when you're around a group and they're all laughing and you're not, you'll be the beacon, you'll be the one that you're Waldo, and they can find you pretty easily. And so with Casey, he pretends. He pretends to be normal. He pretends to laugh and all that because that's what makes him blend in. That's his camouflage and that's his armor. And it was an interesting thing. And Eric and I both were on the same page from the beginning about, again, not to give anything away, but it's a polarizing way to wrap up a movie. And I was very glad to hear from Eric from Jump Street that we were both wanting to adhere to that ending. You know, because again, that's a place where clearly with an independent movie, you could hear from a producer that says, well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
What about a sequel? What about this? What about that? And we were both set on, no, this is the story. And it's polarizing and it strikes, and to me, it promotes conversation, which I hope is what it does, because I think it's a fun journey to go on. And I think it is one of those movies that leaves you discussing at the end in a good way, hopefully.
No, I think you're
and
absolutely
trust me,
right.
we had multiple distributors ask us to change the ending after the movie's out. We're sending them screeners and they're like, can we change the ending? I'm like, I don't know if Breckin's got the schedule to reshoot 3/4 of the movie, but but I was like, no, it would be the most offensive thing in the world to end it any different than we did. Anybody that I know who has any type of mental health issues or anything I've ever read about it, giving it the ending that everybody wanted, the obligatory moment, as they say in a script, would be the absolute wrong thing to do. And I would feel very disingenuous to have done it.
No, I mean, it would have cheapened it. I mean, it would have definitely cheapened the dynamic that, I mean, Breckin's character had with Jess and Jules. And I'm kind of curious, like, I mean, obviously independent film, it's run and gun. You don't necessarily have a lot of time, but I mean, was there a lot of sort of read through time? Because I mean, the dynamic between the three of you on screen was so great. It felt really effortless.
We didn't get an opportunity to do like table reads or anything like that. It was kind of show up in Cleveland, Ohio and walk on the set and let's go. But I think being a smaller crew and to probably Breckin's dismay at times, took a little time to set up sometimes and stuff. I think that gave them some natural rehearsal time together, or time to sit in another section of the house or another section of the building and maybe work. I assume they were probably doing that a little bit while we're figuring out. There were times as an independent film, when we got to the set, it was the first time I had seen it. You know, I mean, there are times where you get into somebody's house and you can look at it and you go, we're going to shoot here. And there are other times where your location person said, here's where we're shooting. And you get there and you and the cinematographer are going, we can't put a camera in this room. This room's too small. And you're figuring that out. So it was, sometimes we had some pre-production scouting time, and sometimes we were showing up in the morning before they got there trying to figure out where we're going to put the lights, you know. But I assume they probably had some bonding time while we were taking our time.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is with independent films, I mean, the one positive/negative is nobody's there getting rich. No one's there. Everyone is there for the love of the game, because nobody's really making money on this. It's not why they're doing it. So the one thing that builds is this very small, I mean, Eric's right, there's only 3 people in the movie essentially, but it builds this very kind of small, close-knit community, whether that is, hey, everyone grab a sandbag and move it over here, or Emily and I and Giselle sitting on the floor in the apartment we're about to shoot in, just talking the scene out while we have an extra 6 minutes.
Right.
But also being a run and gun movie, we're all together. So we actually are probably together more than on a regular high budget movie where, all right, we're done with the scene, I'll be in my trailer. I'll be in the next room with Giselle and we're going to be talking about the scene, because what the hell else are we supposed to be doing? So I think it actually helps too. I think it lends to the chemistry. You know, because again, we're in the car, we're not being towed, we're driving the car, and Giselle is in the seat, and I'm being careful because there's a child in the car, you know.
And I'm just I'm just hoping that, I mean, I saw the chemistry pretty quick, especially between, you know, like Breckin and Giselle. They were working out a lot of little things that weren't in the script, little ways that they would communicate with each other or look at each other. There's a couple lines that Giselle came to me and said, I think I should say this to Breckin, like when I walk away from him, because this would be, and those are little things where probably had they not had a good personal relationship, she might not have thought to do it, but because they were kind of creating a genuine affection for each other on the set, there was this stuff where they wanted to interact even more as characters, and they were just coming up with things on the fly. And who am I to say, don't try that, you know? No, when a little cute little 11-year-old girl comes up to you and says, I was thinking about my character and I thought I would do this. I'm like, then do that.
Yeah.
You do that. So it was a joy.
No,
Giselle was also the Meryl Streep on the set. I mean, they're so crazy talented. She's so good.
She is.
Yeah.
But I mean, Breckin, for you, like, I mean, especially on a shoot like this, is that the joy of sort of the craft, being able to spend time with your fellow actors and be able to work through stuff? Because I mean, there is no everyone going to the trailer. There is no catering tent. There is, Popeyes is around the corner. Let's go figure it out as we'll go for lunch,
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it, is you're kind of locked in confinement and forced to, it's kind of a crash course in chemistry. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. Emily and I got along famously, as did Giselle and I, which is a great, happy coincidence. Because it doesn't always go that way. But yeah, there is a part of it where you essentially, because you're on such a time crunch, we don't own this apartment. This isn't a sound stage. We only have a certain amount of time, a little window of time to do this in. It helps you stay in it. You can't leave it. You can't go to lunch and go to catering and then go to touch-ups. And 3 hours later, I'll see you later, Eric. Like, it's not like that. It's like, I'll see you in 5 minutes. So you're kind of always in it. So you're never really, I'm able to stay in Casey because I got to be Casey all day. And it's actually easier than, it's like when Christian Bale everyone talks about the method acting and whatnot, and it's people who do accents and stay in the accent. And the truth is, it's easier to stay in the accent than to keep dropping it to talk to people as yourself. And that's one of the things doing this movie is you don't have time to drop the character. So it actually helps stay in it because I'm not going back to my room. I'm not going to my hotel. I'm not going to Popeyes for lunch. I'm staying in this. So even if it's just through osmosis, I'm I'm kind of always in Casey's world.
Yeah, I thought Breckin was just a grumpy person in general.
Right.
And then when I saw him do some interviews later, I was like, oh, that's why he was so that's why he was really pissy to me that day.
That's right. He's a method asshole. Yes.
I'm kind of curious from both your perspectives, how important was it for this film to, while obviously it's saying something and trying to sort of deliver a message, I think a very poignant one, it still has those deadpan moments. It still has that, sort of fuck it mentality to it, much like, Breckin's character has. Like, how important was it for that to sort of sustain that throughout? Because to me, that's what made it feel naturalistic. It had the ups and downs rather than trying to sort of force, a super sad ending or a super happy ending. It just kind of was.
There was a whole other sort of segment of the movie that we didn't get to do that had to get cut. And I don't even know if it was in the version of the script that Breckin got. So there was going to be this whole thing where he was on public transportation a lot. And the idea that because Casey blends, right, he's not a noticeable person. The running gag was going to be he was always sitting on the train, and then there'd be these really inappropriate, weird conversations happening around him, and they didn't even bother to censor themselves, even though he's sitting right next to them, because he's just this harmless guy that we don't even pay any attention to. And they were always the most horrible people. There was one in there about two women talking about having to go to a birthday party for a baby that was stillborn a year before. And then like, I'm not buying a fucking present for this baby or whatever. And he's just sitting there like constantly, he would have been just kind of sort of listening with his eyes, sort of like looking over and like, what is wrong with it? And then there was one where they were supposed to sit on either side of him and be talking like across his personal space as they were saying these horrible things. And honestly, it just became too much of a logistic nightmare to rent out the RTA train for the day and shoot it. And we had it, but they had so many rules and stipulations, and they wanted approval of the entire script that we were just like, nah, never mind. But it would have added more humor to the movie, but we were also wondering if it would have slowed the pace of the movie down and taken away from the ultimate goal. But it certainly was put in there to lighten up some of the darker moments. I mean, school shootings and things like that.
Well, for sure. Yeah.
And I think those scenes would be funny, but ultimately they got cut. But yeah, that was sort of in an effort to add a little bit of, humor, a little bit more straight up humor to the movie to maybe lighten it up. But I think that's also me being overly cautious about the material and thinking, am I putting too much polarizing stuff out there, and do I need to water it down? And ultimately we decided not to water it down.
Well, I think you're better off for it, to be sure. And I mean, that's got to be a challenge on both your ends, because I mean, obviously the need for the demand for content out there these days is just running fast and furious. And on one end, I can imagine there is sort of the need and the want to sort of be creative and fulfilled and do interesting stuff like this film is. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, well, if I maybe change the ending, I'd make a lot more money. How do you sort of balance the two?
Well, when you're an unknown guy like me, a lot of times you're just happy to get your project made, right? I mean, I wrote the film in 2015 and we didn't film until 2018, and it didn't officially like get anywhere until 2021. So we're talking 6 years from the day I hit print on the script and sent it over to WGA to like the day that like I could see it on Apple, right? You know? So it was like, that's a long, I mean, I was in 2 different marriages during this movie, right? Like a lot of things changed. That's how long we were making this movie. So I think for me, I'm always about, I just need to get the thing made. And so I guess the question is like, you know, what are we making concessions to get it made? You know, I think in this case, we got lucky enough that we didn't have to make those concessions, but also this was as independent as a film got, right? There was no studio involved at any point. It was us, about 17 investors, and kind of Paradigm sort of helping us push it along. But nobody was really telling us what to do or how to do it. And it was really, once we got on the set, it was just me and our DP and the crew and Breckin, sometimes in a circle going, how does this work? Does this make sense? Because sometimes you even get to a set and that can, or, a location, and that might change the way you have to perform it or the way you have to shoot it, just because it doesn't make sense anymore that way.
Right.
You write it with a certain location in your head, and then you get to the location and it's not that, So I think there was a lot of stuff on the fly of us figuring out how to make this movie while we were on the set. We had a plan and a vision, but there's a lot of concessions that go into it too, and a lot of just changes that you have to make just to get through the day.
Well, it is the spirit of independent filmmaking, right? Sometimes you just have to shut up and do it, or figure out a way to get her done.
You're working around the chainsaws. I'm sure Breckin remembers the chainsaws, the trees being cut out there, and Breckin goes, "Can you just go out and give those guys like $500 to leave?" And our producer went out there and offered them $500 to leave, and they didn't take the money. They just left anyway. So they were nice enough to let us. But that's independent filmmaking right there. You get to a location and nobody knew they were going to be cutting down trees that day.
But I mean, Breckin, I imagine this would apply to you too, because obviously there'll be projects like this where you're fulfilled and you're enjoying the work, but you're not necessarily getting paid a whole lot of money versus, oh, it's a 3-day shoot, but the script sucks and, but I'm getting paid nice. How do you sort of balance the two as sort of a working actor?
I think at this point, hopefully the latter doesn't come across too often, as far as me knowing something sucks, but still going ahead with it.
Right.
But for the most part, again, when you're dealing with, but you definitely have more of a backstop in a studio movie. If you're concerned about something, we'll deal with it on the day, or all right, we still have, 2 months till we film that.
Right.
And with an independent, you're like, hey, we better like this because we're filming in 2 minutes. And we don't have this location for more than 2 hours. So it's either wet it, wipe it, good night, or let's address the issues right away because we don't have time. But I think really, it all comes down to the script. People ask, do you like comedy or drama? It really doesn't matter to me. It depends on the script. And right when I read this was kind of that, as an audience member, I was like, I like this journey. I keep turning the page going, I don't know where this is going.
Yeah.
I'm very curious. So it really does start with the script, and whether it's indie or a studio movie, it doesn't really play into it so much as the initial read is just the project itself.
No, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, just to start putting a bow on this, and this is something I always like to ask people. Think back to your younger days. Was there a moment or like a movie or performance that you saw, or a film that you saw that had the light bulb go off in your head that made you want to go, you know what? I want to get into this movie. I want to get into this business.
For me, it was Michael Keaton and Richard Dreyfuss were the two. Richard Dreyfuss in Goodbye Girl was just something where I was like, this kinetic energy is something I haven't seen before, but I feel like something connected to it. I feel like I have a similar energy, and that would be fun. And then with Michael Keaton, Michael was able to jump from same with Dreyfuss, jumping from comedy to drama, and not like not announcing it ahead of time, just doing these projects. And I remember seeing My Life with Michael Keaton. There's a moment where he talks to his mother and his father, and he starts tearing up. And it was one of these things where for some reason it just rang so true. It was this Michael breaking down in front of his parents as a adult who does not want to cry in front of his parents. And there was something that just stuck with me with that, where I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that stuff because I really connect with it. And then, of course, I mean, by the way, I was 11 when I was pointing at Tom and Jerry going, Mom, I want to do that. So it's Michael Keaton, Richard Dreyfuss, and Tom and Jerry.
Man, no, I love that you brought up Michael Keaton, though, because I mean, I think in My Life, because I mean, it was either right before or right after he did Dream Team, which is just this gonzo off the wall comedy. And I mean, it's it's such a diverse array of being able to put character on the screen. And I love that answer. But I mean, Eric, what about you?
You know, I went to college, 1994 was like my freshman year. I went to play baseball, right? I was going to play baseball. I was going to play for the Cleveland Indians, right? Guardians now, right? And that was my job. You know, I was going to go to college, get through it, get a, you know, all that. And so it was the fall of 94. I was sitting in a Taco Bell with a bunch of freshmen guys, and they were like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do tonight? Some guy who was a little older than us, I think, said, we should go see that new Tarantino movie, Pulp Fiction. And I, honest God, never heard of Tarantino, had not seen Reservoir Dogs at that point. So we ended up at the theater seeing a movie that I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know who Tarantino was. I just knew Travolta was in it. And I was like, oh, he's coming back. That's cool. And I sat in the theater, and I remember midway through the theater going, are they allowed to make movies like this? Like, this isn't how movies are made. And I just remember thinking, that's what I want to do. And I had kind of dabbled in video, like as a kid. My dad had a VHS camera, and I'd make little movies at home. And I kind of understood the language of movies, and I kind of understood screenwriting a little bit just in analyzing movies as a kid. But I didn't think of it as a career, right? I was in Ohio. And but I remember walking out of that theater questioning if I wanted to be on the baseball team anymore, if I had the passion to do that. And then fate would have it, I got injured. They were going to redshirt me my freshman year. I'd never sat since Little League, right? Never didn't play. And I was just like, I don't think I have the stomach to sit here on a team for a year and not get to play. And so they had me rehabbing, you know, and I was running around a track in like January, freezing, sweat freezing on my face. And I was like, I think I'm done. And I remember running off the track and running back to the dorm, taking a hot shower and saying, I'm going to go in and quit the team tomorrow. And I'm going to just jump into this thing, this movie, this Pulp Fiction thing that I saw. And I started signing up for every film class they had, started renting everything, started going to a store that doesn't exist anymore called Media Play, where you could buy all these scripts and stuff, and just started reading scripts and seeing what the structure looked like. And this is the days really before the internet, right? Internet was there, but not really.
Right. It was making noises when you connected. No, I understand.
Yeah. So, and that's really what that was the exact moment, September of 94, watching Pulp Fiction in the theater. And I said, that is absolutely cool. What Tarantino was doing at that time changed everybody, and it changed everybody's outlook on who could make a movie too.
Well, I love that.
And then 25 years later, I finally made it.
You're absolutely right, though, man. Because I mean, honestly, The Enormity of Life is one of those movies that doesn't get made. It reminds us that, you know, of the highs of the high, of the lows of the lows, that, you know, you can still generate positives out of negatives, and that's kind of sort of life as it is in general. And I mean, I think it's a really important thing you guys have put on the screen, and it's a beautiful piece of work. And just again, thank you both for the time today, and congrats on the good work, man. Keep it up.
I appreciate it. I hear it's doing well right now. I've been told that it's getting that. We got crushed by COVID. We got absolutely crushed.
Everybody did, man. I mean, yeah.
But we got maybe one of the only true do-overs in the history of cinema, where we got a new distributor that said, we're just going to do this like it never happened before, because our new guys thought it didn't get a fair shake because of COVID, and they're going to put all their effort into giving it the due that we all thought that it deserved, and that Breckin deserves, and that Emily deserves, and that Giselle deserves. And so I just, thank God for those folks who believed in this enough to put it back out there into the ether and see what happens with it.
Well, you know what? I'm glad they did, and I'm glad you guys did the work. And again, thank you both for the time. This was a lot of fun.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.
Take care.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. You can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.